Hello. Uh, oh, hello. I'm Yoongbok from CertiK. I'm here to talk about security and Web3. Okay. So let's see how the industry is doing. So in 2021, um, the impact of the blockchain and its ecosystem was around $66 billion and is estimated to grow 25 times within the next 10 years. So you can see the growth is kind of exponential, and the TVL of the DeFi, you can see that it is continuously growing at an exponential rate. But as you see on the right hand side, there are not ignorable kind of a risk that is involved in blockchains, which is the vulnerability that the protocol and the apps above it can have. So if you can see in 2020 alone, there were over $500 million lost due to attacks on blockchain that is growing rapidly. So in 2022, there were almost 3 billion in asset loss in only 10 months. So to break down the loss in value, so you can see the cross-chain bridges hold the largest share, around $1.6 billion, which can result in funds being locked, inappropriate minting and burning. So you could have unlimited asset on one chain, which shouldn't be the case. And you have around 250 million dollars due to a small contract vulnerability, which can be caused due to a lack of validation, re-entry attack, price oracle manipulation, and lack of access control. And there are around $200 million worth of loss due to governance attack, usually due to flash loans. So if you can see that as the complexity of the protocol grows, the assets that can be lost also can grow because more and more assets can be relying on that protocol. And as famous Ray Dalio can say, Ray Dalio said, cyber offense is much more powerful. If the cyber offense is much more powerful than cyber defense, the cyber risk is a risk that I can never ignore. Like if you can't be assured that your asset will be secure, you can't ignore those kind of risk factors while holding digital assets. So let's compare the Web3 security with the traditional Web2 security. In Web2, there are some kind of characteristics, like you can monitor, you can sandbox the environment, you can do a proactive defense, like you can stop the server when you detect something is going wrong, and you can deploy a fix, and then resume the server. And like patching vulnerabilities, kind of easy because you can start, or roll back your server anytime. And since the code is not open, all the attackers has to guess what the service might act when you do certain type of actions or input certain types of data in it. And because of those kind of characteristics, it's kind of less costly to maintain a secure environment in Web2 systems. However, let's look at blockchain and Web3. So blockchain in itself is kind of new compared to Web2. Billions of people are using Web2 nowadays, and it has been tested for more than dozens of years. So it's kind of stable and it's pretty a developed concept. But blockchain is a new technical stack that everyone's participating in developing rapidly. And another characteristic of blockchain is that no one can willingly stop a blockchain. So let's say you detect a malicious attack on one chain, no one can stop the attack transaction going through, or no one can stop the actual chain to stop. So, and let's say it's not, the attack is on like a DeFi app, DeFi project on that chain. So you can obviously you can't stop the chain, and on top of that, you can't really um, change the smart contract on chain to prevent those attacks, because it's kind of innately harder to change a code deployed on the blockchain. And since most codes are open source, the attackers know exactly how the platform or protocol will act when you input certain kinds of data. And most importantly, one vulnerability, whether it's small or not, can lead to tens of $1 million or even hundreds of $1 million in loss. And if you look at hardware of hardware systems, the security rate is over 99.9%, because you can actually verify the correctness of the systems through some tools. But in software systems, it's kind of very harder compared to the hardware systems, because it's much more flexible, much more much more flexible and kind of complex compared to hardware systems to actually formally verify, like prove that it is secure and correct. And to introduce CertiK, Professor Ronghae Gu from Columbia University and Professor Jong Xiao from Yale University found CertiK in 2018 using the research results from the team of Professor Xiao. And the most noteworthy result of the result is CertiK OS, which is the world's first and only fully verified multi-core OS kernel and hypervisor. So you can see the code there. It's a spectacular trail for the rest of us. And that research was awarded by these great great places like SOSB, OSDI, and CACM. And in addition to that, we won 3 Amazon Research Awards from that research. And you can see that it's also mounted on a US Landshark. So Professor Ronghae Gu's research lab is also funded by US military. So that kind of shows how secure and kind of breakthrough this research result is. And to introduce CertiK a bit further, so CertiK helps secure more than $300 billion in assets. And CertiK has over 30% of the market share of all audited Web3 projects. And we have conducted over 5,000 audits, and we detected over 60,000 vulnerabilities. And right. And if you see a CoinMarketCap, our share is kind of all around 70%. Okay, so if you see our clients, list of clients, in DeFi we have famous and the biggest players like Aave, 1inch, SushiSwap, and Banker. And in the platform like L1s or L2s, we have Binance, Polygon, Cardano, and Aptos. NFT, we have Sandbox, Decentraland, ApeCoin, BAYC, and Axie. And traditional industry. So when traditional industry enter the blockchain or Web3 market, they need a source they can use or rely on to actually measure the credibility or to help them enter the market, like provide guidance of the best practices or provide some common vulnerabilities they should avoid. So they chose us to help them do that. So in traditional industry, we have Google, HSBC, and Line as our client, and Ant Group as well. So we have this suite of security products that we offer, but I'm going to focus on three of them, which are audit and Skynet and leaderboard. So starting with audit, we currently do around 200 to 300 audits monthly, which kind of translates to 5 million lines of code. And we usually find around 2,000 vulnerabilities in those projects. So we have our internal tool that we use to do audits, like we call it the accelerator. So once you put the code in, you can put it by reference, you can put it by the file, a raw file. Once you put the file in, after a couple of hours, it'll generate these kind of annotations and automatic result report, like automatic findings that you can use. So it kind of provides you with a boilerplate of settings that you could start out with. So we never do auditing 100% manually because we have these kind of tools. And Skynet, which is the reference from Terminator, is a on-chain real-time monitoring system that we provide that monitors on-chain activity, like SNS, social network services, kind of sentiment, liquidity monitoring, all those kind of stuff in one place. So once you are done with audit, the audit is a one-time thing, and you can use Skynet to continuously monitor your project so it can continue being secure. Yeah, and this is some numbers that that Skynet is currently monitoring. So it has monitored over 7.8 billion asset transfers, labeled over 4 million accounts, and over 800 enterprise subscriptions since 2021, since its launch. And there is a leaderboard system that we provide. So it's like a rating system based on audits and Skynet. So we kind of gather the data together to produce like a score for each projects. And we have over 3,000 projects listed on the leaderboard. And the daily active user, as far as I can remember, is around 300,000 people a month. And lastly, to introduce some of our investors, we have famous investors like Sequoia, Tiger, Kochu, Lightspeed, Binance, SoftBank, and Coinbase, and Goldman Sachs. So actually, we are the first company to be invested by Binance, and Binance invested us and started Binance Labs, which is our investment arm. And Goldman Sachs is kind of noteworthy because we are the only two of the only two Web3 companies that they invested in, or the second, and that kind of shows. And American banks kind of require very strict due diligence process when they invest. So that kind of shows us that Goldman Sachs is trusting us to be above standard of their standard. Yeah. So thanks for listening.
Yoongbok, I think it was a very short notice. Thank you for being ready to present.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, guys. Do you have any questions about Web3 security for, yeah, John Chan? We have a mic. John, we have a mic, please.
Yeah, hey, thanks for the presentation. I was just wondering if you're also providing insurance just in case that you maybe missed one line of erroneous code, and or whether you are in a partnership with insurance protocols like Nexus Mutual.
Yeah, so we currently do not have any insurance products available because there are many legal requirements that need to be met in order to provide insurance products. But we are, it would be nice if we could have them, but yeah, I don't know.
Thanks. I have a follow-up question, but it's I think it's a more philosophical question. So in case there is a flash loan exploit or someone is draining a pool by, I don't know, manipulating a price feed from Oracle, do you think the attacker is to be blamed? Or do you think it's just that he basically leveraged open source code?
Well, that's kind of a morality issue. So I can't really stand as kind of CertiK's kind of opinion, but in my personal opinion, well, it's kind of picking up something on the street that is not yours. So you could say it's bad to just pick it up and say that's yours, but it's usually just better to help secure that first and make sure it goes to the right place.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's a tough question.
No problem.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I wonder what is the language your operation OS written in? Like, what is the language, and is your OS open source?
Language?
Yeah, is it C or some other
what do you mean by
programming language? Like
programming language I use?
No. Programming language your operational system is written in.
Oh, I think it's written in.
Like mostly, I understand that. It's like,
Yeah, it uses COQ for sure, COQ, but I'm not too sure exactly what tech stack it uses. But it uses COQ to verify stuff, and I'm thinking it's written in some other language than C.
and is it open source?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, the technology is patented, so I don't think. Yeah, and I've only seen the black box of the OS, so I don't think it's open source.
Hey. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Hey, my name is Tyler from Yoongbok. I have a question. You mentioned the malicious transaction / signature. I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about the signature, malicious signature. Do you mean by malicious signature is a forged signature or a signature that is not verifiable? So is this something you guys can detect?
Malicious signature.
How would you know about that? Because, you know, my understanding, because it's a decentralized system, things like this should be caught just by the nature of blockchain. So could you please explain any cases where this can just go without notice by governance?
Yeah, thanks. So malicious signatures can be any kind of forged kind of a signature that that the contract itself kind of misses to verify correctly. So there are a lot of kind of signature verification methods in smart contract in Ethereum, and there are vulnerabilities that that can happen when you incorrectly verify the signatures. Does that answer your question? So the signature is on the app layer, and the consensus layer doesn't really care what happens on the app layer as long as the state of the app stays the same. And the verification of the signature itself goes on as raw bytes, and you verify them through like some methods that you define on by yourself, or there's a standard for verifying some signatures. So yeah, so that's kind of a different layer problem. Yeah.
I think so. Just one last question.
Yeah, just actually was I was sharing actually on the podcast, but it's with the rise of AI now. I've heard that, for example, some protocols or some services already looking with like ChatGPT or other services to insert code and verify in some way to see if there is some risk and some potential error. Is CertiK kind of considering using AI, or are you already integrating it?
Yeah, we are definitely looking
Specifically
into
for-
that, and I believe we already have that integrated into the accelerator while it processes the code initially. And yeah, well, ChatGPT is great, but usually it makes
Isn't there one with GitHub as well, like for verifying code that makes it easier?
GitHub.
Isn't there like a
Ye-
verifier as well?
Yeah, I've heard some of them. But I wonder if it's as good as what we use.
Yeah, it depends on the coding language. But okay, cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks again to all our speakers. Great combination of topics.